In broad daylight, on a busy street in Islington, everything changed in just a few seconds. One moment, it was a normal afternoon in North London, and the next, an attack happened so quickly that a teenager was left collapsed on the ground, seriously injured. What makes it even more disturbing is this: there was no warning, no time to react. The people nearby didn't even have a chance to understand what they were seeing. It all unfolded too fast. And then came the silence, the shock, and the confusion that often follows when something serious happens out in the open, in the middle of the day. At first, there were no clear answers, no confirmed identity, no explanation for how it led to this point. But one thing was undeniable: a daytime attack had taken place. And the biggest question appeared almost immediately afterwards. Who was responsible for it? At 1:02 p.m. on Tuesday, 9th December, police received reports of a serious incident on Westbourne Road in Islington. Officers were sent to the location straight away. When they arrived, they found a teenage boy who had been seriously injured. Within moments, the response escalated. The London ambulance service attended the scene, and because of how critical it was, London's air ambulance also arrived to support the emergency treatment. As medical teams worked urgently to help the teenager and prepare him for hospital, officers focused on securing the area. A cordon was put in place, limiting access and turning the location into a protected scene where nothing important could be disturbed. In the space of minutes, Westbourne Road went from an ordinary street to the center of a major incident, and the first step of a fast-moving investigation had already begun. But at that point, the public still didn't know who the boy was. For a while, the public had almost nothing to hold on to. No name, no background, just one basic fact repeating everywhere. It involved a teenager. And when something serious happens in broad daylight, that kind of silence doesn't feel calm. It feels heavy, because people don't just want information. They need it, just to make sense of what has taken place. So the questions start coming fast, and they don't stop. Who was the boy? What happened in those few seconds? And the question that follows almost immediately after: how did the person responsible leave the area? Because this didn't happen behind closed doors. It happened out in the open, in the middle of the day, on a London street. And when the facts aren't clear, the gaps get filled with fear, with rumors, and with the worst assumptions. But soon, that first missing piece finally came into focus. Then the identity was confirmed, and everything became heavier. Then the truth landed, and the story stopped feeling distant. The teenager was identified as Adam John Henry, just 15 years old. Up to that point, everything had been uncertainty. Fragments of information, unanswered questions, people trying to understand what they'd just seen or heard about. But the moment a name is confirmed, it changes the weight of the entire case. It's no longer a teenager. It's a real boy, a real life, a future that should never have been cut short. Adam was taken to hospital and treated by medical teams, but despite their efforts, he sadly died later in hospital. And that is the moment this becomes more than an incident, because a boy has died. And from that point on, the focus shifts to one thing only: finding out exactly what happened and who was responsible. Details about Adam's personal life were not widely shared at the time, and that matters. In a case like this, facts are protected, and information is controlled for a reason. Not everything can be said immediately. Not everything should be. But even with only his name and age confirmed, one reality was impossible to escape. Adam John Henry was 15, and whatever unfolded on Westbourne Road that afternoon had already changed lives forever. Islington is the kind of place most people associate with everyday London life. Residential streets, shops on the corners, people heading home, running errands, walking past without thinking twice. It doesn't feel like the sort of setting where something this serious is meant to happen. Not in the middle of a weekday, not while the day is still bright. That's what made it hit harder. This wasn't the early hours. It wasn't an empty road. It was just after lunchtime, a time when the streets are still active, when people are nearby, when life is supposed to be normal. And yet that afternoon proved something uncomfortable. In a city like London, safety can feel real right up until the moment it isn't. The shock wasn't just about what happened to Adam. It was the fact it happened out in the open, in a place that looked like any other part of North London. Because when a tragedy takes place in broad daylight, the questions don't fade. They sharpen. And from here, the investigation began racing against time. From that point on, the case moved into a different phase. This wasn't just about responding to what happened. It was about reconstructing it. And that responsibility fell to detectives, working to piece together a timeline that at first was almost invisible. Because in situations like this, the truth doesn't arrive all at once. It comes in fragments, one camera, one witness, one detail at a time. Investigators began focusing on what could be confirmed, what was seen, what was heard, and what could be tracked. CCTV footage in the surrounding area became one of the first priorities. Cameras on streets, buildings, shops, and anywhere that might have captured movement before or after the incident. Not because cameras tell the whole story, but because they can reveal something the human eye misses: direction, timing, and who was where. At the same time, detectives began gathering witness accounts. People who were nearby, people who passed through, people who might not even realize what they saw could matter. In an investigation like this, even a small detail can be the difference between a dead end and a breakthrough. And while those pieces were being collected, the scene itself was treated with care. Officers reviewed and secured evidence, making sure that anything relevant was documented properly, preserved properly, and checked against the growing picture of events. As the investigation unfolded, the Metropolitan Police also made a clear appeal. If anyone had information, any detail, any sighting, any footage, they needed to come forward. Because in the first few days of a case like this, time isn't just passing, it's disappearing. And then, just days later, the investigation reached its first major turning point. On Monday, 15th of December, C.D. Winion, aged 20, from Camden, was charged in connection with the case. The charges were serious: murder and possession of an offensive weapon. Before that charge was authorized, Winion had been arrested as part of the investigation, as detectives worked to act quickly while evidence was still fresh. With those charges filed, Winion was remanded in custody, meaning he was kept in detention as the case moved through the courts. The following day, on Tuesday, 16th December, he was due to appear at Willesden Magistrates' Court, marking the start of formal legal proceedings. But this is where it matters to be precise. In the UK, being charged does not mean someone has been found guilty. It means police and prosecutors believe there is enough evidence at that stage to bring formal allegations before a court. Guilt is only decided later, through the legal process. So while one man had now been charged, the most important fact remained unchanged. The court had not reached a verdict, and no sentence had been given. And even with that first charge in place, the investigation itself wasn't over. But even after that first charge, the case didn't slow down. Detectives made it clear that the investigation was still ongoing, because in a murder case, charging one person doesn't automatically mean the full picture has been found. It can be one piece of the answer, but not the entire story. And for Adam's family, and for the people who were there that day, almost was never going to be enough. Police continued working through leads, checking information, and building a clearer timeline. And they repeated the same message again and again. If anyone had seen something, heard something, recorded something, even something that seemed small at the time, they needed to come forward. Because cases like this don't always break wide open with one dramatic moment. Sometimes it's one detail, one name, one person deciding to speak. And as the days passed, it became clear that this investigation wasn't finished. Then, a second name emerged. And then came the second major turn. Abdeldadour, age 22, described as having no fixed address, was arrested on Friday, 26th December, as part of the ongoing investigation. His arrest marked a new development in a case that had already shaken the local community, and it made clear that detectives were still working through a wider picture. In the early hours of Sunday, 28th of December, Dadour was formally charged with murder, and the following day, on Monday, 29th December, he was due to appear at Highbury Corner Magistrates' Court as proceedings moved forward. With a second person now charged, the case entered a more complex stage. It wasn't just about one suspect and one set of allegations. It was now about understanding how each individual may have been involved, what the timeline truly looked like, and how the events on Westbourne Road led to the loss of a 15-year-old boy's life. But again, it's important to be accurate. A charge is not a conviction. At this stage, the court had not heard full evidence, and no verdict had been delivered. What was clear, however, was that the investigation had expanded, and that the questions surrounding Adam Henry's death were far from settled. With two men now charged, the question people asked almost immediately was the simplest one, and the most dangerous one to answer too quickly. Who was the main person responsible? But police investigations, and the courts that follow them, don't work on instinct or emotion. They work on evidence, timelines, and what can be proven properly. And right now, this case was still moving through the legal process. That means not every detail is made public straight away. Some information is held back. Some evidence isn't discussed openly. And most importantly, the exact role of each person, who did what, when, and how, is something that can only be established through court proceedings, not through speculation. So even though two names had been released and two charges had been authorized, there was still no verdict, no conviction, no sentence. Nothing had been decided in a courtroom yet. At this stage, the public could only speak in facts. Two men had been charged in connection with Adam Henry's death. The investigation had progressed, but it hadn't reached its final truth. Because you might know the names of the defendants, but you still don't know the whole story. As things stand, two men have been charged with murder in connection with the death of Adam John Henry, aged 15. The first is Tsaidi Winyan, 20, from Camden, who has been charged with murder and possession of an offensive weapon. The second is Abdel Dadour, 22, who has also been charged with murder. But it's important to be clear about what that means. This case is still going through the UK legal process. A charge is not a conclusion. The matter has not yet been fully tried in court, and no verdict or sentence has been delivered. For now, the investigation and proceedings remain active, and any final answers about responsibility will only come once the courts have heard the evidence and made their decision. And maybe that's the hardest part to sit with, because tragedies like this don't only happen in the dark. They can happen in broad daylight, in places that feel familiar, And that's a reminder that safety is never something we can take for granted. It's also a reminder to stay fair and accurate. In cases still going through court, charged is not the same as convicted. The legal process exists for a reason, and final responsibility can only be decided with evidence in a courtroom. But beyond the headlines, beyond the updates and the names, there is one reality that matters most. A family has lost a 15-year-old boy, and if anyone has information that could help, the right thing to do is to contact police through the official channels.